Hi guys, welcome back. In this lesson, we will be adding the code for the admin.py file. So let's open the admin.py file. Okay, so the code that we will add will read from our dataset file that we have downloaded over here. And then we will extract the data into a pandas data frame. And then from there, we will transform the data so that we can store it in our spatial table. But before we do that, we need to use an object from the Leaflet class. We will add the Leaflet app in our settings.py file. So let's open that. And then in the list of installed apps above the WaterWatch app, we will add an app for Leaflet. And then add a comma. Okay, and then save the file. Now open up the admin.py file again. So now let's add the code for our admin.py file. So firstly, we will add a couple of import statements. Okay, so we want to add a point object. So this will store our latitude and longitude values. And then we will also be importing the datetime object in order to get the current date that we will use to insert a record into our table so that we can see the date and time in which the record was inserted. And then we will also be using the Leaflet GeoAdmin class. So in the admin.py file, you have to register your model as well as the admin class. And instead of importing a standard Django admin class, we will be using a Leaflet GeoAdmin class. And we have gotten that from the Leaflet app that we have just added over here. Okay, and then we will import our model. So we need the model to be registered to the admin class. And then we will use pandas to do our transformations as well as read from the data file. So let's first create a GeoAdmin class. Okay, so basically in order to register this admin class, we need to specify the name of the model over here, as well as append the word admin. So this is what Django requires. And then we specify the type of admin class that we want to use. We want to use the Leaflet GeoAdmin class. So that's all we have to do. And now you need to register the class. So it's just admin.site.register. You pass in the model as well as the admin class for that model. Okay, so that's what we have to do before we can use the model. Okay, and now the next thing that we need to do is we need to read in the contents of the data file into a pandas data frame. Okay, so we just create a variable to store our data frame. We call it dfxlreader. And then we use pandas.readXL in order to read Excel files. If we wanted to read a standard text file, we would use readCSV. And then we specify the location of the file. Okay, so now we need to test and see if we are able to read from the file. So we're just going to print the first 5 records of the data frame. So we use the head function to print the first 5 records of the data frame. So let's save the file and then run it to see if we are able to read from the file. So it's python manage.py run server. Okay, so as you can see, we have successfully read from our file, and here we can see the contents of the file. We have the suburb field, which is the name of each suburb. We have the average kiloliter consumption value in this field, and then we have the latitude and the longitude value for each suburb. Okay, so now we can terminate the server with Ctrl+C. Okay, we can comment out this line because now we know that the data is stored inside of our data frame. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to loop through each record in the data frame and then write the record to our table. So let's add the code for that. So if we want to loop through a pandas data frame, we need to create a for loop. So we specify an index and a row. So all of the contents of each row will be stored in this row variable, and then the name of the data frame .iterows. So that's how you loop through a pandas data frame. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is we need to store each value of the record into a variable, and then we use that variable to write the record into our table. So we just create a variable with the same name as the field name. So for instance, the suburb we extract from the row, and then we search for the suburb field and we extract the value and so on. And then here we have the longitude and latitude values. So they are 2 separate fields. We will combine them into one object, which is the point object. So that's why we have imported the point object. Okay, so now we are ready to save this record to our table. So we are going to use the model that we have imported. So basically, if we want to insert a record, we do the following. We take the field name inside of our model and we assign it to the value that we have extracted and stored into this variable. And then to get the suburb, we add the value which is stored in the suburb variable, and so on. So for each field, we extract the specific value and then we assign it to a field name from our model. So we will be doing that for every field. So I'll just copy the code for that. Okay, so once we have done that for every field, we save that record into our table. So over here we have the geometry field, and we use the point object in order to group the longitude and the latitude values. So that is how we will be storing the location information for every suburb. And then we add save to save the records, and this will loop through every record in our data frame and then store the record into our water consumption table. So let's save the file, then run the server and test and see if our data has been inserted into our table. Okay, so we have no errors. Now we can open up our application in the web browser. Click on follow link. Okay, so now we will verify that the data has been inserted into our table using the Django admin portal. So we add a /admin. Okay, so firstly we can see that our table was created for us, and now let's click on that. Now we can see the value of every suburb. So our table now contains data that was inserted by our code. And if we open up a suburb, we can see the information that is stored about the suburb. So we have the name, we have the ID value, which is just the index, and then we have the average monthly kiloliters consumed, as well as the geometry object, which contains the latitude and longitude values. So it stored that as a point. So we can see when we look at the name of the suburb, it matches the suburb name on the map. And you can see that the point is placed accurately inside the suburb. So basically, if you see the leaflet map and the point is accurately plotted, it means that the spatial database has been successfully configured and integrated into our application. So now we can start to move on to creating the visual aspect of our application. We can use the data that we have stored in our spatial database and display it on the map. So that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.